Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of CashTalk. And once again, I'm joined by the lovely Nicola and Mason. How are you guys?
Good. I'm excited for the episode. I feel like this will be a good one.
Yeah, me too, John. Me too. I know we're going to get straight into some really deep topics today, but first of all, John, what's going on in the background there? Is it like a telescope or something there?
Come on, mate. You know how much I love my history and stuff like that, and I just want to be a little bit more connected to the stars and astronomy and all of that stuff. See, for people that don't know a lot about me, I love my history. I love kind of everything that's not today, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I love futuristic stuff. I love history, and this was actually something that was given to me by my brother-in-law. He used it with my nephew, and with my two sons. I want to start getting into the area of looking at the stars. It was a big thing in history. People would look at the stars, and astronomy was huge. But very, very early days, Mason, because it's in my room. Obviously, as you could tell, like looking at the stars in my room, I'm not going to be getting much, plus probably just a plaster on my roof. So need to get out there, need to learn how to use it properly, because I have had a crack at it, and all I could see was nothing. So very early days, but watch out, astronomers all over the world. This might be my next frontier.
It's funny, you're right, John.
Yeah. Oh, listen, we're not going to get tinfoil hat today, but I'm not naive to think that we're not the only thing in this universe, which is pretty crazy because, it's just like, it's mind-boggling. What, the Earth's been around for billions and millions and millions of years, and what, we're just here for apparently a little small kind of blip of, a few thousand years, depending on who you're talking to. Just to think about the dinosaurs a few, million years ago is pretty bananas. So when you think about a UFO, I don't know if I think about those, those circular discs that come, and that's, in the movies and stuff like that. But yeah, there must be something out there. There must be something out there.
Interesting. Well, let's bring it back to Earth now. So today we're going to be discussing finances and relationships. So as if finance couldn't be complex enough, you throw someone else into the mix, and all of a sudden it becomes quite chaotic in some cases. But I want to start off with talking about when you're single. I don't feel like there's not much content around making financial decisions while you're single. That's where I wanted to start. So, Nico, perhaps go to you first. But what are some challenges when you are single and making financial decisions?
Yeah, I think it's definitely difficult because, I guess maybe throughout your late teens, 20s, you're just worrying about yourself. But then as you get older, you start to think, okay, well, should I plan as if it's just going to be just me for the rest of my life? Or should I plan as in I might potentially be in a relationship in the future? I might potentially have kids in the future. It's sort of difficult to plan for those things when they're not concrete. And it's like, do we plan for them not at all? Do we just completely plan for what we have now? Or do we somewhat factor that in? And I feel like it's a difficult dilemma for a lot of young people.
And it's a very there's a lot of moving parts that are going on in your mind when you're thinking about your future, because there's just so many variables. And the reality is that yes, probably most people get a companion, and most people fall in love and all of those things just in regards to such. But there's a lot of people that don't. Yeah, and it's we really need to discuss today, Mason, around kind of those thought processes around that, and obviously to help people kind of get through that pathway. And I know yourself, ladies, watch out. Mason is single, but Mason, what about you? Because I know, obviously, you've been in finance for a while, and your brain's wired to be future planning all the time. Like, what goes in your head? Is it quite similar to the thoughts that Nicola was sharing before? And yeah,
it's funny when it comes to me, because obviously I'm in this space and think about these things quite a lot. But my thinking has definitely changed, particularly over the last few years, because as you I think when you're in your 20s, it doesn't matter as much, simply because you're sort of seeing your foundations, getting your career sorted out, all these types of things. Some people, of course, get married quite young and things, so that's a different case altogether. But as I'm sort of just entering my 30s now, yeah, like, I have to admit these thoughts have come across like, are my decisions that I'm making now the best just for myself, or am I thinking I'd like to have a family one day and that is the plan, but I can't really control that. So it is challenging. I know because, for example, I've built my own home and things. I have built a 4-bedroom home. I can only occupy one of those bedrooms. So there's 3 empty bedrooms at the moment. So I'd like to one day hopefully fill those with something. But yeah, so that was a decision not really based on my current self, because I could just buy a smaller apartment or just a smaller home in general. But that's my hope, is to have a family one day. So I did plan that out with my ideal situation sort of in mind. But when it comes to, say, some of my other investing decisions, I invest quite aggressively. Would my potential partner be okay with that? I have no idea. But I feel like I've had to make that decision based on my current self. So it's a mixed bag for me. Like I feel like I've got a bit of a mixed bag. It is challenging. I don't think, because you could be in a relationship tomorrow, right? Like it is so, like I think it's so challenging for someone entering their 30s and even in their late 30s being single, because kids are still on the cards. As you get older and older, kids are maybe less to a possibility. So that takes that off the table. But late 20s, early into your 30s, I think it's extremely challenging being a single.
Mm. Very, very interesting to understand the mindset of obviously in your thought process through to that. And Nicola, to you as well too, like you've got big decisions that you're going to probably be making in the next few years as well. And I can recollect my decisions, like the family home, Mason, obviously it sounds like you've pretty much already got it. Like, does that come into your head and your thought process, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's actually probably a common dilemma that I've sort of thought about. It's like, okay, do I save and perhaps purchase a property sooner that could just be for, say, me to live in, or do I wait and just save for like the family home that probably wouldn't happen for, quite a while, potentially, to have kids. And I guess I used to be more set on maybe like just renting and then saving for the family home, but I guess like I have seen a lot of other couples do it in terms of the first house they purchase isn't necessarily their family home. So there can be that changeover. And I think it's different for every person. And it's really tricky when you are going through life and, it's not like from day one exactly what it is you want and exactly how you want your life to look. So you can't necessarily plan for everything. Yeah, so it's a tricky one.
It really is. Yeah. And the answer to this question really is, it always depends. Yeah. But the reality is life is most likely not going to turn out exactly the way you planned it. Yep. Like, it might be better than you expected. It might be worse than you expected. But for you to have the foresight of getting it exactly the way you want it in your mind and the way you planned it out is very rare. Yeah. So the simple point of like the next stage, when you talk about a house, well, when you then end up talking about getting in a couple and having children, there's people that plan to have children, they'll get married, 2 years later they have a kid, they go on a nice romantic nice romantic holiday, and before you know, she's pregnant and they're having a child. Yeah, like, and then the baby comes before the wedding, and it's just, that's life. Yeah. So when it comes to your finances and you making decisions on what you need to do, I think you need to make decisions, especially in your early days, based around the investment outcome. Try and not get it too emotionally connected to it, because the probability is that most likely the first house you buy is unlikely going to be the house that you're going to stay in for the rest of your days. So if you then base that decision based on an investment decision, who knows, you could potentially keep that house. Yeah. Flip it into a rental property. Yeah. You might use it to get capital growth with it and use it as the equity to then draw onto your next house. And then once you've got that other partner, well then, it's a dual income family, and being able to then get the family home. For me, I think when it comes to those decisions, you've got to try and get the best financial outcomes you can do, because of the factor that getting it right the first time sets you up so good moving forward. Yeah. Like if you can make a really bad decision on your first property versus making a really good decision on your first property, it's a huge difference. Yeah. And not to put more pressure and more stress on the outcome. Yeah. And probably people are listening just going, oh my gosh, I just made my elevation of my thing go right up. But if you try and take the emotion away from it, take out the lifestyle requirements and just base it off an investment decision, yes, you might want to make this based on where you want to kind of live and stuff like that. But if you can make the best financial decision, that's what you need to be looking for.
I think that's some sound advice there, John. And I also think it's important that you don't delay the decision in the hope that you're going to get the outcome that you want. So imagine if I delayed my decision until I had a family. Like, it's something that may never happen. So, and then you miss out on years and years of potential capital growth and things like that. So it's tricky, but I think you just got to make the best decision you can with the information you have at the time. And unfortunately, we never have all the cards. And for me personally, that's quite difficult because I like to make informed decisions. Unfortunately, life doesn't give you the script, so to speak. So that is quite challenging. But yeah, it's singles. It's tricky business. But moving on from singles, though, once we get into a relationship, there's more challenges again. It doesn't get easier, unfortunately. It just gets harder and harder and harder. So I want to start off with, in the early stage of a relationship, John, and Nick as well, when, if ever, should you talk about money?
And well, there's two things I want to talk about here. First and foremost, I want to make a closing comment on the cohort that was listening before, or the people that are listening in regards to singles. The biggest tip I can give to these people, like I'm going to give to the couples and everyone, is get started as early as possible. Let time be your best friend, not your worst enemy. Okay? Now, in regards to a couple scenario, you'd hope that both of them have started early. Makes it much easier. Okay? I still remember one of my first clients that I ever worked with in my business. They were a mid-40s couple, okay? And they were both single, got together in later life. One had a fully paid off house by that point, and he got together with a woman who was beautiful, lovely. They're married now, and been married for a while. And she had a fully paid off house. So they started early, they knuckled down, and they paid off their house. So they got into a relationship, and they had two fully paid off houses. They then made the decision that they wanted to get the family home. They didn't know what to do. They thought they should sell their houses. And I ended up advising them to kind of keep their two houses, keep them where they are, rent them out, yeah, and buy the family home. And so they went from essentially 2 incomes, each other's, to 4 incomes paying off one house. Yeah. You could just imagine how quickly that next house got paid off in. Yeah. And so it just emphasizes the transition from single to couple. Yeah. And just trying to get your own stuff sorted out when you're on your own, because it just makes that couple financial decisions much better. But following on from your question, it becomes harder because you've got two different people's money stories and money beliefs. Okay. And I know, Nick, we have a passion about talking about this, but the reality is that our money story and our money beliefs come from our upbringing. You know, so you've lived 20, 30 years of your life, potentially, or 40 years, not with this person. They've got different outcomes. They've made different mistakes. They've been exposed to different things in regards to money. So the best thing you can do when you're in a relationship, I'm going to be straight up with you, is talk about money as soon as possible. Okay? Because in a relationship, especially when, say, you live with someone, I remember when I first started living with my wife, she folded the towels different than my mother did. Yes, my mother used to take care of me very, very well, and I'm thank you, Mum. Okay, but the reality is my wife would fold the towels different than my mother would. And so when I'd go to help her to fold the towels, I'd fold her the way that my mother would. And then she'd grab the towels, she'd unfold them, and then fold them the way she did. And And now I know I'm just talking about towels here, but then that's something. You know, the way that you cook. Yeah. My wife's from Turkish background, we're from Maltese. Yeah. So some things have a little bit more sugar in theirs or sweet stuff than ours do. Ours is more savory. And look, so the way that so there's all of these things that you're doing it, and it's these getting in each other's spaces that, so then couple that with then finances. Yeah. You can see that couples and intertwining this becomes quite difficult. Okay. So the best thing you can do is you can talk about it, especially early on in the dating side of things. Okay. And we need to get this away from this taboo of not talking about money. It needs to be done. Like health and wealth are the two biggest factors in people's lives. So we need to be discussing them, and then we need to be doing that and trying to not become the other person. That's another the worst thing you can do. Yeah. It's just both be on the same page. Okay. So because what you're doing is when you're a single, you've got your own plan, your own direction, your own destination. When you then get into a couple scenario, well, then you've got that joint pathway where you both want to end up to. Okay. But I'm going to throw a question back, and maybe to Nick, I will start with you. What always baffled me, because maybe I was in the game from very young, is just, when do you become on the same page though? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's great to talk about it. Yes, it's great to whatever, but isn't there a point in time of the seriousness of the relationship before we start moving to that same page?
Yeah, that's a really difficult one. And I feel like it's different for each person because the stage that's right for them to say combine their finances is going to vary from couple to couple. I think in the initial phase, it's not, yeah, like you said, you're not trying to find someone who's like a clone of you or a clone of your money beliefs. It's like about understanding where that person comes from, like what was their upbringing, why do they have the beliefs that they have, and you know, being able to understand why they react a certain way around money. And in terms of combining, it's actually really interesting because I feel like couples do it differently. Like you hear about some couples who have everything completely combined, it's all into one big joint account, everything's completely shared, you know, maybe from a year in. But then you hear other people who keep things even, like stuff still separate, partly separate, even when they're married. So it's like, I don't think there's one size fits all when it comes to this. I know this isn't a very concrete answer, and obviously I can only answer from my, I guess, personal experience and experience with clients. But I think it's going to feel different for everyone based on like their money story, if that makes sense.
Could you be on the same plan, Mason? Yeah, but not share your finances? Because what I think most people are scared about, yeah, is the joint accounts. Yeah, if it doesn't turn out the right way, yeah, or those kind of things. So, do you reckon there's an opportunity to start on the planning together without kind of having the level of risk that people potentially sleep over?
I think you can, but I do think it's harder. I do think it's a lot harder. Not having that transparency between accounts and what the money situation, because it takes a high level of trust in that situation if you don't know exactly where the money's sort of going. But I know for me, like I've had friends who've been going into relationships and they've fresh opened a joint bank account within the first couple of months, and that stresses me out. Like I just think, oh, I just don't know. Like that's just me. I think and this is my personal beliefs, but I think that once you live together, I think that's probably a good point of where you find this should be somewhat getting more joined together, because you're sharing the bills and stuff like that from the household. But if you're saving for a goal, Mason, there's nothing stopping you and our viewers and listeners, but by setting up two accounts and having the same plan and the commitment to save for something. So, for example, you might want to go on a $10,000 holiday. Yeah, you guys might both set up $100 a week into your own account. Yeah, where you're saving together and starting to build a plan together. So I think there is some things that you can do to plan for future goals where you're just contributing to that same goal, that same plan. And obviously, if things don't work out, like let's say you never go to that holiday, yeah, because you broke up beforehand. Well,
That's that. That's that. So I think it's just a matter of just unpacking it and taking layers off the onion, yeah, and working out. And now it's not easy, as you know, because there's a couple of slice and easy. Everything goes in the same pot. You're both going together and whatever needs to happen. But if you could kind of mirror that journey towards getting to the plan, I think there's that's an easier way to de-stress. And I don't know about you, Nick, but if that was the case for you too, you'd probably feel a little bit less stressed that you're both going towards a common plan and a common goal, but not necessarily joining your finances.
Yeah, I think it's all about stages as well. Like, say, for example, some people might in the early phase of dating have a joint account where they both put in money just to do like fun things like day trips or dates or stuff like that. And that's like starting small. Then the next might be a joint account for a holiday. The next might be a joint account for a house deposit. It's like, it doesn't have to be like all or nothing overnight. And I think that, yeah, being on the same page, obviously the sooner that can happen, the better, because you don't want to be dating someone and they've got completely different idea of what they want to do and you're not on the same page. But I think in terms of combining, it's not something that has to just happen overnight. You can start small and then happen over time as things kind of progress naturally.
What I'm more questioning is the joint account.
I don't think the joint, well, you don't need it, but it's like a nice thing to have, I guess. If
I reckon this is just a mindset thing. You know, if you've got $10,000 in one account, $10,000 in the other, unless there's some special policy inside your account that gives you special bonuses for having a certain amount over an XYZ, interest on 4% of $10,000 in two different accounts is the same as 20% at 4% combined. Yeah, just you've got added risk where that's the case. And if you then want to take one step further to sleep at night, you can also have signatories to make sure that both people need to sign to take money out, which also causes a little bit of a headache in regards to the administrative of that stuff. So I think in the early stages, it's more around like how much I trust this person before I start joining my stuff. So my thing to this is just de-risk it. Yeah, de-risk it. Take the steps that you need to take to de-risk yourself, but get on the planning as much. And what's the worst thing that can happen if you plan together? Well, isn't that's what a relationship's all about? Relationships about building your future together, and your finances is one of those. So I'm just questioning the joint account. I'm questioning the fascination around it. Yeah, it's the same reason why I question the family home as why do you need to buy a home? There's this, it's just a part of our culture, a part of our society that we need to do this. Yeah, don't feel rushed to do it. That's why my other comment earlier on to singles, for example, in the single cohort was make a good investment decision. Yeah, you'll thank yourself later on. And trust me, if you have that future family and you've got 4 kids and this and that running around, you would have said, thank God I got that first one right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The joint account is, it's a debate for the ages, isn't it? I think there's no right, there's no wrong with any of this. It's just what sort of feels right for you guys and just knowing what you're getting yourself into. But I'm going to throw a bit of a spanner or open a can of worms here, because like a lot of my friends in their 20s we've had this very, very conversation around if we're working towards a common goal. So let's say we have a joint bank account, John and Nick. And I'm keen to get both your opinion on this. And we're saying for a holiday goal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the 2 members of the couple are on different incomes.
Mm-hmm.
One's on say $100,000 per year, and another one is on 60. Do both people commit the same amount to this goal, or is it because of higher income earners more money, should they put more towards the goal because they have more discretionary income, you'd think? Or what's fair in this situation? Because I've heard both sides of the coin for this, and it's not easy. It's not, I can't imagine it's an easy conversation to have about how to allocate funds to the goal.
This is you've opened Pandora's box. Yep. On this one, the reality is that there's no right answer to this, straight up, and the reason is because there's so many things that come around with this. So in my culture, for example, the man pays for most stuff. Yep. And in some cultures, that's not the case. The female pays for everything. So like weddings, for example, big ticket items. You go out for dinner. just on your thing. So if you talk about it, let's say one earns 100,000, the other one earns 50,000. What do you split the bill then based on the income that's distributed and split it accordingly? Yeah. There's many ways to approach that. What she ate, what I ate. There's so many different things in regards to doing this. My more important thing is that you start agreeing on the plan and the decision rather than the actual outcome itself. That's more important. It's more important about saying, okay, well, you're on $300,000, you're on $50,000. Yeah. Are we joining our finances? Like the person with the 300,000 might say, yeah, it's easier for me to contribute. So why doesn't the person do the maximum that the person that can do with the $50,000 and the person with $300,000 matches? Yeah. So there's that way to approach it. So there's just no right answer to this in regards to it. It's just both of you getting on the same page. And I think also more importantly, so that's step one, but next one is also staying committed to that, because the commitment to that goal is a sense of I'm putting my side of things in this relationship to get the outcome that we want for ourselves. I've got to speak to a few of your mates, don't I?
You might have to. I think hopefully they listen to this. It might help them out, I hope. But moving on from that, should we discuss red flags? Like, is there any financial red flags that we should be mindful of? Like, can all money beliefs and different money stories match up, or are some relationships sort of doomed to fail?
My wife would say, Chris, don't date a financial advisor. That's what she'd probably say. Yeah, red flag number one. So, or an accountant. Yeah, I could just imagine both of them. Anyway, sorry, Nick.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. In terms of red flags, I mean, there definitely are red flags, but it's just like, where do we sort of start? Like, obviously, different people have different money beliefs and money mindsets, and you're not going to find someone who has the exact same beliefs as you. I think if there's certain flags around things like manipulation or like control or anything like that, that would be the biggest concern for me. Like, I've seen bad ones of like, the female marrying a guy and then she wanting to have her own business, him basically saying like she should stay at home, look after the kids, like doesn't want her to be earning any money. Like, for me, that would be a huge red flag. Like, that to me seems crazy. But yeah, I think it's just, I mean,
there's a bit of financial abuse there. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and I think that goes with a relationship, that there needs to be this mutual beneficial kind of approach to what's going on. But would you say, Nick and Mason, it really boils down to the values of the person? Are they, Nick, you might be a planner, like looking forward, you know what I mean? You might want to, be serious about the money. You might want to take it seriously, but, a red flag for you might be for someone who doesn't care about tomorrow at all. It's all about blowing today and doesn't want to be open to the discussion of planning for tomorrow. Yeah.
I think if they're not open to it, then that's the red flag. It's not so much their current belief. It's the fact that they're not willing to discuss and communicate and be open to sharing of people's opinions, because that's like obviously a huge part of a relationship is communication. So if that person is not a good communicator and it's just like my way's the highway kind of thing, well, then that's the red flag, which isn't necessarily to do with their money. That's more to do with their communication style. And that would be the red flag for me, because that would flow on into every area of your life, whether it's how you live, what you spend money on, how you go about doing things, that would flow into everything. So that would be a red flag in that case. I don't think most people are like that, though. I think the majority of people are open to hearing people's opinions, or
but some people aren't. Some people aren't.
Some people aren't.
That is the red flag. Yeah, it's the openness. Because I was going to say that you could have a gambler who's been gambling their whole life. It might not look good on paper, but that if that person has been trying to stop gambling, trying to do it, really seeking help, is on the road to get there, I don't know about you, but for me, yeah, it'd be the openness to actually wanting to change it, being real about it. Yeah, wanting to be real about that. So, yeah, I think, and I'm of agreement with Nick, I think it's the being open to the other way of doing things, yeah, and then coming to that kind of mutual ground. And if they're not willing to do that, I think that's a big red flag.
The gambling one's an interesting one because I think like intention is one thing and that is good. But at the end of the day, like we can't just judge people on their intentions. Like we have to also judge people on their actions. So it's like, would it be healthy to sign up to getting into a relationship with someone who's a gambler? I personally don't believe so. If they've been doing that for years on end, that's like an addiction. So I think that would be like, draw the line for me. For me, that would be a red flag because I value personally financial security. So I wouldn't want to be with someone who's making me constantly stress about money because that would affect our relationship or cause resentment. You know, the flow on effect is huge. So I think that, yeah, for me, that would be like, that's like black and white.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit more open in regards to the scars that people might have on them. Yeah, I think that's my personal thing. Like, Mason, I know we were speaking about it early in the week about, if someone's a smoker. Yeah, I know you're, for example, really big on your health. Yeah, so imagine you found a beautiful woman who's going to spend the rest of your life with you. Finances are sound, perfect, but she's a chain smoker. You know what I mean? And Mason, I'm guessing you're not going to be too kind as a chain smoker due to the way you are with your health.
Yeah, no, it's 100% spot on. Like for me, that is a red flag for me. And not to mention smoking is quite an expensive habit too. But it is a red flag. But so on paper, when you say that, I say yeah, like I'll probably go into that. But unfortunately, sorry, it's more human beings have feelings and emotions. And once you chuck in emotions and feelings of love and things of this nature, the decision becomes a lot harder and you become a lot more, not accepting, but open to the idea of, okay, yes, this is like, and we all have flaws. Like these flaws that we're sort of pointing out just a lot more, potentially more damaging and open and things of this nature. So it's a hard one, isn't it? But yeah, unfortunately, love is an emotion and we can't control what we feel sometimes.
And that's why I say it's probably not as black and white for me, yeah. And I know, for example, like me and my beliefs, my wife is Muslim. I'm Catholic. Try and break that down to a Turkish Muslim father and a devout Catholic grandparents and stuff like that. I was terrified of that discussion. But we have two beautiful children. We've worked out plan that out, how to live with that, and and share in the beliefs of both cultures, yeah, and both belief systems. Now, there's many people that told me, John, you're crazy. Yeah, what the hell are you doing? Same with my wife. So, from my own experience, I can think that you can break through everything, and I think it actually makes the relationship tighter. In saying that, going back to your finance discussion, it's all about open communication. If I wasn't willing to learn in regards to that, if she wasn't willing to learn, well, this wouldn't have worked out. Yeah. My wife comes with different money beliefs, completely different money beliefs and a different money story to me. Yeah. And you can have different things on the way that you approach that. But like you said, Nick, it's about talking the talk and walking the walk. So some person, especially in the early dating stage, it's not a problem. I'm going to fix it when it comes to gambling or whatever it's going to case. And then you're 4 weeks in, 2 months in, 6 months in, and nothing's changed. Yeah, different story. You got to nip it in the butt pretty early. Sorry, there's going to be a few bit of heartache, and there's a little bit of, but I'm sure there's a beautiful person that's right for you to come. So it's around about walking the walk and talking the talk, and this is where the communication's so important, accountability is so important, and having a trusted relationship, and then that flows into your money. And you shouldn't be making any money decisions if you can't trust the person as well too, because it is quite a big thing. So yeah, it is, Mason. It's quite an interesting topic when you join finances or become a couple. But get it right, and it becomes a really powerful partnership.
I think trust is literally the biggest foundation because, yeah, the reality is like, if you're questioning whether you should join finances because you're not sure if you trust them enough, like that would be kind of to me like, okay, well, maybe this isn't the right person for you to share your life with. Because for me personally, I would want to feel like I have complete trust in this person that they're going to do the right thing by me and I'm going to do the right thing by them. So I think if you have that, you can work through all the other small things. Like that's like the one big thing that kind of has to be there. And then obviously the other things like mindset and upbringing and, you know, approach to money and how you have your bank accounts, all of that stuff is like smaller, but it's like the more value around how you treat each other and how you respect each other that will impact all of those things.
Spot on. Spot on.
You said that very well, Nick. I think that's a great way to transition to the next part. And like actually, before I transition, I just want to say I know you might, John, you might be similar, but I know for the couples I've worked with, the best ones I've found have been one's been a spender and one's been a saver, and they sort of come together. So it's very much an opposites attract type of thing, and they sort of balance each other out. It's crazy how often this happens. So I really like that because you don't want too much of either. I think a healthy mix of both is really, really great. So yeah, it's not like you have to have the exact same money belief. And if anything, maybe having different money belief stuff could be a good thing. It could bring out other sides of you as well.
Yeah, so you don't want them too far apart. Yeah, but you don't want them the same. So like if we had it like as a polar opposites of the saver and the spender, and in the middle, let's call them the realist. Yeah, you want one on the spending side of the realist and you want one on the saving side of the realist. Yeah, and if you can work as a relationship to get to that position, it's awesome. Yeah, because the one on the spender side will be a little bit more YOLO. Will be a little bit more like, we've got to smell the roses, we've got to enjoy life a little bit more. Whereas the one on the saver side will be a bit more cautious, batten down the hatches a little bit more. Yeah, but is willing to kind of on both sides, and why I say it needs to be moved, because they're both willing to kind of move to each other's side when's required. Yeah, and that what makes the perfect balance of a relationship and a partnership to get to one. Now, when you're by yourself, it's very hard. You need to push yourself to that position and then move on either side. Yeah, to smell the roses, batten down the hatches. Smell the roses, batten down the hatches. Yeah, so yeah, very, very interesting. And Mason, you know, you say it, I see it all the time. Over time and time again, they do start to replicate each other often. So the longer the relationship, the more their decision making is pretty seamless and together. Yeah, and coherent. Yeah. So yeah. That's the ideal. But yeah, at the start, don't be scared of polar opposites, okay? They actually can work well together.
And I think it's important to remember as well that these aren't like set in stone. Like, yes, you kind of have one tendency that you've probably grown up having, but it's not like it's fixed, like you're a spender for life or a saver for life. Like these things can flow and kind of change throughout your life depending on what stage you're in. And yeah, it's not like you should be dating based on like you need to find the person that's exact opposite to you, but I think just ensuring that within the relationship, you have that balance of like, if you both are just full on savers and you never enjoy your life, well, that's not healthy. But if you both also just blow everything, then also that's not healthy. It's like kind of having a bit of both within the relationship.
I need to become like a financial hitch, Mason. Yeah, I do like financial assessment or like a scorecard for potential couples. Yeah, anyway.
John's next app.
Yeah, John's next app. The integration of like Tinder and like a financial assessment tools. Yeah.
Oh no.
Well, we're getting into some interesting stuff at the moment. Got it. Now, and something I wanted to talk about because I think this is it's becoming more and more popular. I think we're not popular, more of a discussion point. Couples who meet somewhat later in life, so maybe late 30s, early 40s, even in the 50s. Have some significant assets that they're bringing to a relationship. Should they sign a prenup, John?
I'm glad you said mid-40s, mid-50s when you said later in life, mate, because you put me in that cohort straight away, and I still think I am young. So for all the listeners and viewers, I do apologise for Mason's seriously bad introduction to that one. Yeah, we're all young. You're as young as you want. But listen. You know, I'm no lawyer, but for me, there's situations that do warrant it, okay? Especially when you think about the risk of it breaking down in today's day and age. Yeah, and so we need to think about what kind of agreements can protect, and all we're trying to do is just de-risk. Yeah. And, there's the term gold digger. There are gold diggers out there. We want to be making sure that, you're not getting in that. And we talked about some of the beliefs and the values and before you combine your finances and stuff like that. But also as well too, people just have two different pathways as well too, which ends them up in their position. So in most cases, you get together not because of people's finances, depending on this application that comes out, this version. But what I'm just going to get at is most people don't. Yeah, they'll meet someone at a bar or a night out and they'll fall in love and then they are where they are. So first things first, I think you need to protect yourself when you're going into a relationship and trying to de-risk that scenario as much as possible. So if that forms as a part of a prenuptial agreement, well, then that is a prenuptial agreement, and that needs to be discussed by, with your lawyers of the appropriateness of it and the validity of it. And what I mean by that is, me and my wife met quite young. Yep. And I started the business really young. Yeah. So we had relatively different situations. I'm not going to say that I was a mega millionaire and I, whatever, but we had different stages. But she was a 19-year-old girl working at David Jones. Like, do you know what I mean? It's a different story. If I got a prenuptial agreement then, how valid would it be today? Let's be honest. Yeah. Like, think about it. Like, business has thrived through that scenario. We've been with each other for over a decade. She's had our 2 children. She's taking care of them. We've got 2 kids now. Like, that couple that met in those early ages, they're at a totally different situation to where it is today. So, I would imagine, because our law system is based on a fair approach, that they would probably view a prenuptial agreement at that point, depending on how it's worded and how it's put together, as a very different situation than where it is today. Okay? So, should that person get a prenuptial agreement at that point in time? It depends. Yep. Depends on your situation, like what you're coming into the table with, what you want to sleep at night factor, risks. Like, let's be honest, if you didn't do it and you were coming in, there's also risks of you just being stupid and doing that as well. I think it's more about thinking about it, speaking to a lawyer, and having that open discussion. It's when you have those open discussions, that communication, and get that professional opinion, that's the case. But do bear in mind, the situations change, okay? So depending on how it's written, the validity of it, if you even talk about people that have got together in their later life, talking about that. Once again, what's the situation? Is it likely to change? So on and so forth. So to answer your question as best as I can, in all situations except probably if you're in the exact same situation, it's probably a discussion for you to have with your lawyer, okay? And to understand your risks, to understand what's involved, and to understand how you can tighten up that situation so that if things didn't work out, this is how it exits, okay? And you hope that you never use it and the relationship works and you guys flourish forever. But what is it? 1 in 2 marriages, I think, at the moment break down. So if you're not having that discussion with a lawyer, I think it's probably silly.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's, there's no one answer. And it's funny, when I think of a prenup, I always think of the Seinfeld episode where George Costanza wants to get his fiancée to sign a prenup because he thinks it's going to cause a fight and cause a breakup. But she's like, yeah, go sign. I've got more stuff than you, no worries. Like, so I always think of that when I think of a prenup. But you mentioned there, John, that unfortunately, I think the stats are in that 1 in 2 couples do get separated. So that's the next transition I want to go to regarding separation. And this could be either from a divorce or, unfortunately, even maybe someone getting widowed. Massive life event, but it also has a massive impact on your finances as well, doesn't it? And Nick, I might start with you this time. I haven't heard your voice in a while. What's going on, Nick, with this? Like, it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, divorce is something that no one ever wants to go through or imagines having to go through, but the reality is it does happen. And I think, yeah, it's one of those things where it does get tricky with finances. And I think generally, you know, the longer you've been together, that essentially means that you've grown that together over that period of time. And like kind of John mentioned before, it's mostly would be split equally. And I guess it kind of does go back to like your previous question about having a prenup. And yeah, like it sort of does depend on the stage of life. Like if you're in your 20s and you get together, it's going to be more about what you grow together over time. And like prenup is probably going to be a lot less relevant than say you got together when you're 60 and maybe you've already been through divorce at that point and you're like, well, I really need to protect myself because if something was to go wrong, is that something that I want to go through again? And yeah, I think divorce it's a heavy topic and it's not an easy process by any means. And there's a lot of complexity around it. Yeah.
There's a lot of complexity around it, but I think the biggest one, that the most complex thing about it is that you're going through a very heightened emotional time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've worked with a lot of people that have gone from divorce, messy, some real clean ones. Yeah. Clean as they can come. When there's kids involved, not good. Okay. Unfortunately. But the reality is they happen and they happen far too often. Okay. And in both scenarios, if you're widowed or if you are in a divorce, you're usually put in a position where is completely different to how you've been maybe for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, depending on the scenario. And so you're in a different financial position and you're in a different mindset position, okay, based on where you're at. Because you're usually in the first stages, it's like, I don't know, let's use a man. I don't want to be with a woman at all. Like that's like the last thing I want. That does usually fade, okay? And like, well, you want to find another companion. Yeah, but at the start, it's like, nah, this is all for me. My plans are for me. And so your plans change, is what I'm trying to get at. You've been planning down a road for a long time and you got a new plan and a new direction. But you might have found yourself as you might have not been the financial controller or the person that managing the finances. And you've been delegating that to the other partner. And I don't know, let's keep on going down the rabbit hole. And that was the person that was giving you financial abuse. And that's the reason. And you've now exited that. Yeah. And you now finally, all right, you're in a position you won't have a big pot of money because of a separation or the sale of the family home. Geez, planning more than ever. Yeah. This is where professional advice comes into the forefront. Very much so. Yeah. Because there's a new direction in a plan. There's re-education that needs to be done. There's new behaviors that need to be done, yeah, and worked on, okay? So, big aspect of a person's changing. The widowed one, there's obviously usually a lot of grief as well too, yeah? A scenario, depending on the financial situation, there might be different things that are getting worried about at that point, different stages in your life that need to be done. But support is so huge because you've been thrown off a pathway where you didn't expect. Yep. And the biggest thing when it comes to major events is, as a human, our brains kind of twist up, yeah, when we haven't been in that situation before or don't know how to prepare for it. Okay? Just want you guys to take a moment to think, yeah, if we all got on a video today, war's broken out, we're all on the front line tomorrow and off to go fight a war. Everyone would be crapping themselves, yeah? You wouldn't know what to do, yeah? So you got to think about a life event like that is exactly that. You haven't experienced it before, you haven't got the brain knowledge and the experience to go through that. And so we know that when you're going through really, really heightened emotional times, you're making bad logical decisions. Okay, so we just need to be aware of what's going on, understand that this is normal because of that, haven't experienced before heightened emotion. I just used the war exercise as an example to put you in a position like that. Yeah. So this is where you need support by trusted professionals to be able to help you, because if you don't, unfortunately, I've seen a few cases. Yeah, they, for example, are on their knees. They can't pay week to week. Yeah, they don't know how to manage money at all. Yeah, which then flows into another scenario where, you know, they've They get a lump sum of money, but it's gone as quick as they got it. So, Mason, it's a very, very interesting time in people's lives. There's a lot of moving parts, but if I had to say a must, regardless of if you're the most knowledgeable person in finances, this is where financial advisors really show their value, like instantly. That sounding board, that redirection, that guidance. When you're in a really, really emotional time period, you need to be basing your financial decisions based on logic.
Absolutely. It's funny you say, because I don't think there's a time where there's just so many changes all happening at once. Your goals are likely going to be different. Your income's now different. It's an advisor's it's bread and butter, really. Like, it's just everything you can possibly want advice on comes to this point in time. And unfortunately, you can't forward plan this because it's something you never want to happen. So it's one of those things that just hits you straight in the face one day when you don't even know. Like, it's a big one. It's a very...
Having someone to turn to is like so important, particularly if you were, say, the person who's come out of divorce, or like your partner's passed away and they were the primary person who managed the finances. So you're not sort of knowing whereabouts, like, you know, your investment account or your super, or even just the day-to-day banking, coupled with the grief or, you know, the shock and the stress that you're already going through. You're now also having to navigate this whole new world of finances, which perhaps hasn't been the part of the relationship that you previously managed. So I think, having someone to turn to and just ask those questions to have a sounding board is so, so important, because it's hard to make those decisions and think clearly when you have all this other kind of chaos going on around you and so many big life changes. So I think, that's really important place where an advisor can add value.
It was interesting. I went for dinner with one of my long-term clients on the last week, and I still remember the wife. They're in their later years. She grabs me by the arm and she goes, "Oh, if my husband goes, she goes, I'm going to need you very much so." Okay. And so the next phase and the thing you were talking about, mate, is about people becoming widowed. Yeah. It's okay to reach out for help. Yeah. We're here. This is what we're trained to do. Yeah. And I think that was beautiful for me, because obviously I love what I do. I love the couple. I've been on a financial journey for them for a long time. I reassured her. I said, it's all good. We've been not planning for his debt. That's not the way that I kind of word it, but we've been planning. Yeah, we know of the outcomes and we'll guide you through that. They'll allow you that if that point in time happens, you can grieve and your money is doing what your money needs to do. But obviously, hopefully he lives for a very, very long time to come, but some are also very sudden. Yeah. And that sudden change, doesn't matter if it's long and they pass away, they're still going to grieve. If it's sudden, they're still going to grieve. But that sudden change in finances, if it be a divorce or through someone being widowed, that's where a lot of bad decisions can be made. Yeah. Because emotions are clouding your judgment.
That's wow, there's lots going on there, but it's great that you have those relationships with clients, and it's heavy stuff. But basically what I've gathered from this conversation is, no matter if you're single, early stages of a couple, married, long-term relationship, separated or widowed, complex. Mixing finances and emotions, tough times, but I've certainly got a lot out of today. I think I've actually learned a fair bit just for myself, just talking out with you both. It's been fantastic. But is there any final closing comments from either of you guys?
Just be aware of your emotions and how they're playing with your mind. Don't be cautious, okay? Especially when you're starting in a relationship, okay? Understand that the emotion of love is one of the most powerful. As they say, love is blinding, okay? And just hopefully today you've heard about what happens in life, and that life isn't just smooth sailing. There's going to be bumps along the way, but that's okay. Try and control what you can control, and what you can't control, you can't control. Okay. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really, really loved it. I know, Nick, I hopefully you enjoyed it, because I could hear the passion in what you were talking about. But was there any tips that you wanted to pass on to the viewers and listeners as well?
I think, yeah, just don't put it off until later. Like, I think it's one of those things where, like, there's always going to be changes in the future. Life is going to have its ups and downs, but it's never sort of too early to get started and start at least thinking about how to manage your finances better, no matter what stage you're in. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for jumping on and listening and watching the podcast, or watching the podcast. Mason, thanks for today, and Nicola, thanks for joining us as well.
Beautiful. No worries. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. This is a great chat, guys.
Thanks.